All right. So, welcome to our January Patreon project. Continuing our round the world theme. And last month, if you recall, December, we visited in a virtual way, we visited the winter stream, going into or coming out of Deer Lake in British Columbia. This month, we are in Northeast USA and the state of Vermont. Let me just actually share the photo of our subject. Yes, so continue around the world theme. This month, we're in Vermont. Now, on Patreon, we had a little vote going, and I shortlisted four of your photos. So I normally always select one of your photos for our monthly projects. And out of the four, this was the favored scene. Thank you very much, Jean, again, for your photo or photos. You submitted a few from your neck of the woods. And this is these are some old farm buildings, which I believe is on Route 100 in Vermont, south of the Coho Inn and Motor Lodge. There you are, if you want to look it up on Google. So I think what attracted us to the scene was this lovely sort of peaceful rural view of these quite attractive old buildings, a group of three buildings here, and a nice sort of rural scene. A sunny day as well. Nice shadows to be had. Jean subsequently gave us a photo, which I've chosen here, which is a little bit further back than the original photo. We were quite close to the buildings, but Jean kindly shared an additional photo where we're stood back a bit, and we can see. I always like to see more of a context of the area. So we had a discussion on Pat Chat about how we would tackle this scene on our Zoom call a few days ago. And a few things came out of that about composition, about the connection of the buildings, bit of a debate going on there, what building was connected to what and what was behind and so on. Placement of windows, placement of doors, the direction of the sun as well. And I'm going to take the liberty of making a few changes that I'll describe to you as I go through. So lighting is always up for grabs to be changed. The level of the horizon. Are you going to make more of a feature of the sky on this? That lovely sunny sky and those fair weather clouds, or are you going to make more of a feature of the foreground, the ground? Speaking of which, we had a little bit of a talk about the inclusion or the resurrection of the pathway, the lane leading up to the main building. So if I could describe them as in the context as I describe the different buildings too. So main buildings, middle building, and little building on the right, which I think is part of the dairy or where the end product comes out. This being I believe a dairy area. So main building, middle building, left hand building. So a little pathway coming out from the main building there, and sort of curving around. If you can imagine it curving around, and then joining up to the main road. We've got on the left, we've got these wildflowers, which we believe is called goldenrod, which I think is pretty invasive in Europe as well. It might be pretty dangerous to horses, I think. You see it growing by the roadside in the UK. Pretty common wildflower, quite tall, and yeah, it gets everywhere. So we've got a kind of almost like a hedge going on there on the left hand side, and then a little bit of it over there. in front of the main building. As you can see, the main porch has seen better days, sloping on the right, sort of collapsed on the right, which I will try and keep. I'm not sure how much we're going to see as we zoom out. We go back out to the distance where the photo was taken. You obviously can't see it as much there, but as you zoom in, you can really see how it's collapsed on the right-hand side. So we've got a little bit of that goldenrod going on there. We think there's a well or a cistern here, a little bit of a horizontal surface catching the light. We have various shrubs in front of the building and grasses. I mean, in the photo here, I think this has just been clipped by the farmer, local farmer, but it's not your manicured lawn here, and we can see little patches of the earth being exposed there. I'll zoom in, little patches of the earth or trampled grass where it's dried out. And then we have to imagine that pathway. Well, we can see the entrance here over on the right-hand side. So it's going to sweep around and then go into the building. On the right-hand side, talking about background, we've got the background trees there, quite dark at the base of those trees, the road going on into the distance. Then on the left-hand side of the buildings, we've got the beyond the fields at the back of the farm, we've got more buildings. We talked about other things that we might include from or exclude from a creative point of view. I believe we came to the conclusion that this railing here, this fence or gate, may not be included for me. This post, if I can get it in, I'll have it going over to the right and maybe have it showing up a little bit, but it's almost invisible there. It's a little bit darker than the brightness of that front wall there, which is in fact, along with the road, that's probably the brightest. So when I'm looking at this, I'm thinking about values as well. Where's the light? Where's the light? Where are the lightest things? Well, we've got that building, we've got the road, maybe we've got a little bit of the tops, the clouds, maybe a little bit of the chimney here, the vented outlet there, the top of the roof, perhaps a little bit of the horizontal surface and my imaginary lane as well. But that post, I think if I do include it, it's leaning the wrong way. It's going away from the middle of the composition. I want to have it leaning inwards. You may want to, when you do yours, of course, as part of Patreon, we all get to take part in this, and those of you that are on a critique level, you'll get to send me a photo of your painting for an individual critique from me. But even if you're not on the critique level on Patreon, have a go at this, please. And you may want to include a car. There was a car or two on Jean's original photo. Is that one there? Can we just about see the headlights of a car there? Well, you can get the general idea if that is a car, the sort of height of those cars. I may not include a car. I like to have the feeling of the sort of quiet rural scene here. So maybe none of the trappings of the modern world, so to speak. Yeah. So we had a good old discussion then via Zoom a few days ago. So the format of this, let me just go back to me. So the format of the demo, as per normal, I'll go through the whole process step by step, trying to give as much commentary along the way. I'll start off with my initial thought on the composition and my process. Then I'll go through the various stages. As I say, trying to give as much commentary as I can. and I'll answer your questions as well. Hopefully you've seen the question section or the question icon on the Crowdcast interface. So pop your live questions in there, please. Materials, I'm using Saunders Waterford cold pressed paper as per normal, 15 inches by 11 inches. Paints from Mark Jackman, normal colors, neutral tint, burnt umber, burnt sienna, yellow ochre, spring green, viridian green, cobalt green, cerulean blue, cobalt blue, ultramarine blue, alizarin crimson, cadmium red, light red. Might need a bit more light red in there. Cadmium orange, cadmium yellow. Gone a little bit green from the previous painting. Lavender, lemon yellow gouache, and a white gouache, both a little bit dirty from a previous painting. I've done a thumbnail sketch, just my initial thoughts on the layout. Hopefully you can see that okay as regards the composition. Of course, I'm going landscape, and the numbers are my thoughts on the sequence of steps. So after the drawing, then number one, you can see one appearing in various places, one covering up the whole scene with some paint. So I'm going to finish the sky. We're getting that pathway. We're getting the distant field as well. Then number two will be the lighter parts of the buildings and the grass. Number three will be the background woods, left and right, going dark down below. Then number four, we're on to the shadows and shading. I've done a little bit of cross hatching there. So some shadow, the light coming from the left, and some car shadow coming out from the goldenrod here. The shadow on the buildings. You can see I've done an angular shadow here, as I discussed on Patch Chat. These are my thoughts anyway. The shadows on Jean's photo are quite attractive, but I'm imagining the sun has gone round just a little bit, maybe another half hour, another hour, and I think slightly easier shadows. We've got more of a shadow going across the car shadow going across the grassy area immediately in front of the buildings, and a 45 degree shadow going across that building there. Still keeping the shadows under the edges of the rooftop. So there, under the vent at the top there, and these shadows coming across from that hedge. Number five, I've got details just with a smaller brush, maybe getting some of these vertical boards, which in my mind, they're quite sort of iconic for these old timber buildings in that area. Although having said that, the boards on the white building, they're horizontal, whereas they're vertical in the other two. So yeah, a bit of a different orientation of those boards. I'm not going to include anything else as regards farm animals, tractors. Bruce kindly shared with me earlier today some ideas about some old tractors or an old pickup truck, and they were sort of like a rusty red color, quite attractive. So I'll try and post those if Bruce hasn't beaten me to it, and you might want to include that in the scene. I did do a practice painting yesterday, in fact. Jean, another of Jean's photos from the other side of the building. We're looking almost contre jour here, and the same building, road now on the left, and there's a tractor sat there in the lane. And yeah, I mean, you can see my ideas here about the sky, the background trees, the placement of the buildings, the road, and the texture and the definition on the vegetation and the goldenrod there, and this field that was had these grassy patches with little bits of exposed soil here and there. Anyway, that was the practice. Brushes, I'll come on to the brushes as I get to that stage, but most of it will probably be done with my brush of the moment, my Tintoretto synthetic mop brush, size 6, series 1407. Let me just see if there's any questions before we start. Have I covered everything? Oh, those of you watching this on Crowdcast, Patreon members, you'll see the green source photo button where you can download Jean's high-res photo, and there is the original photo as well on my first Patreon posting, so you can have a look at the close-up of the buildings, or this one that I'm going to use for this demo. Okay, let me make a start then. No more questions. Right. Drawing wise, where's my pencil? Drawing wise, start off with a 3B pencil and get in the main shapes of the composition. I'm probably going to start drawing the main building first, get that right in the scene. And Jean's photo is pretty much there as regards the position of everything. I'm not going to change too much from that, except a little bit of that lighting direction. Now, there is a little bit of perspective with this, not so much with the main building. And I'll start with the top. I'll start with the top left corner of that main building. It does rise ever so slightly up, tiny bit. We'll try and get it looking right as regards the width and the height of the building. The right-hand side is almost vertical. It does come out a little bit. And the left-hand side out a little bit as well. Bottom of the roof. And then the sides, try and make them as vertical as possible. A little bit of a slope down from the road. The road itself, again, bit of perspective. The left-hand side, a bit steeper than the right. There's the right-hand side. Grass is going away to some other buildings, which I guess are behind these trees. Try and get in a bit of a natural outline to those trees. Back to the buildings then. So that's the main one. I'll come back to I'll call it the chimney in a minute. Let's get in the middle building. And the very end, the right-hand end of that building, quite a rusty corrugated iron roof. And the bottom of the roof slopes down a little bit. Left-hand side of the roof. Try and make that look symmetrical as well, left and right side. The left-hand small building. Now you think the middle of it would be there, but it's actually there. So the top of the roof, now it's lower than this one, a little bit more, almost horizontal, a little bit more horizontal, but goes up a little bit. Let's have it going up a little bit more like that. Going to make it a bit more elongated. The left-hand side of the roof is at the same angle as the middle building. Then the right-hand side. The bottom of the small building now is pretty much horizontal. And the corner of it is in line with the vertical corner of the middle building. Right-hand corner of left-hand building, left-hand side, the building there. The base of the building, trying to get the height right, that slopes up. So there's a little bit of a slope like that. There's the general slope to think about going up to the road. My imaginary lane, my imaginary path leading up to, now this is quite an important thing to get right, and the kind of sweep of it as well. Shall I do the left-hand side first? Yeah, left-hand side first. Just imagine it going around like that. Now, I don't want the near side going below the bottom, but let's have it coming down towards the bottom and now just going up slightly to the road. The far side of this pathway, so probably the widest point will be there, and then it's going to go up here, and this would be sort of almost, I'm drawing those lines there so you can sort of see from a perspective point of view the kind of angle of that sweep. We've got the cistern there. Porch, the entrance porch. No, I'm going quite small here. It might be difficult for me to give the impression of this broken down porch, but we'll make the right-hand side lower than the left, and maybe I'll be able to get away with it being sort of giving the impression of it falling down like that. The top level, that was the other thing we discussed on our Zoom call, was where was the ground floor, which we think is of a kind of stone construction, and then the top bit are these vertical timbers. An indication there. Window. Now the window in the source photo is just there, and it looks a little bit odd with the corner of it being right above the roof of the entrance. So I'm going to take liberty of moving it over to the left. This will be in shade here, but there is a little window there, and we've got the window on the white building. We've got the doorway as well. And the hedge. Top of the hedge, almost horizontal. And then the shadow. Angled down like that. So imagine those sort of fluffy tops of the goldenrod, those yellow flowers there, and then going quite dark here. Some shrubs. Some shrubs in front of the main building, and going to the background now, to the left of the farm buildings. You'd think the base of the woods on the left would be in line with those on the right, but they're not. They're lower. So you can make a decision what you're going to do on that. So there's the base of the woods on the right. They sort of come down a little bit and they go up. So that's all dark there. Grass here, nicely cut. And then over on the left, a little bit lower. Let's go in at that line there. So that's the base of the woods in the background, and then my natural edge. Now the woods in the photo, the top of them go in here. Maybe I'm going a little bit OCD about that, but I think it would be better if we had them sort of coming into that building there. Maybe we can see a few more in the background there. So we cover up that with some darker greenery. There's a couple more things I need to think about. There's that post. Don't know what it was doing there. We had a little bit of a debate. Is it a tree? Is it a tree stump, or is it an actual post for the gate? I reckon it's a post for the gate. So let's imagine it's there. Perhaps the gate used to be across here. All right. So let's have the post there. Shadow of that post going across the lane. Chimney then of the main building is pretty much right in the middle, and that's about there. Get the width right, and a sort of triangular hat to it, top to it. It's almost like an equilateral triangle in a way. Does that look symmetrical? I think it does. Should be right. And really dark shadow underneath that top. There is some kind of a vent here. I'm not bothered putting that one in. I guess that's for the ventilation of this building here, letting the air go through. Hot air rises, of course. Let the air get through. Okay. Final things, the base of that cistern, that well top there, the rougher grasses going up there. Flat field there. Hopefully these pencil lines will show for you. Those I think the most difficult thing is getting all these angles right. So that's your horizontal, that's your eye line, just there, straight across. That there is almost horizontal, the bottom of the main building roof. Yes, I think I'm fairly happy with that as a composition. And I know I would encourage you to do your own thing with this and change things in the composition. You might want to go up closer. You might want to come further away, move it to left, move to the right, move the horizon up or down as you want to make a feature of the sky there. And the inclusion of other things, a car on the road, or figures, cows in the field, old tractor, some classic vehicle nestled in there. Yeah, that would be some nice little icing on top of the cake if you wanted to do that. I'm just going to keep it, bearing in mind, I want to try and keep it simple for everyone. Keep it fairly close to the source photo, except for my imaginary pathway leading up. There was, in the source photo, there's a lot of grass here, so I'm just going to try and make it a little bit more interesting. I would just check and see if there's any questions before I start painting. Going back to the plan then. We're on step number 1, going over everything. I'm going to dampen the paper first, but paint over everything apart from those areas that are going to be obviously quite light and or I'm going to paint in a special way. So I'm going to paint around parts of the buildings that are going to keep light. So there, the front, the rooftops, but I will go over the side of the building facing us and all of the foreground area as well. First of all, then, I'm going to dampen the paper with a sponge, not very damp. So I've got my water over to the right and a damp sponge. I find this is the quickest way. You could, of course, use a flat brush, but this is a little bit quicker, an even layer. Of water, and then I've rinsed, I've wrung out the sponge, and now just mopping up that excess moisture. So we basically have paper that's just damp, not too moist. Sky then is going to be trying to think about that blue. I think it's a little bit there's a warmth in it. So a bit of an ultramarine blue and a cobalt, and it goes a little bit green on in the distance near the horizon. Mop brush then. Let's mix up a blue, ultramarine blue, cobalt blue, and then just check this is still damp. Now you might want to draw out the outline of your clouds first of all. I'm just going for it, and fingers crossed we'll paint around these imaginary clouds and we'll end up with something fairly realistic. With these clouds, I want the base of the clouds to be soft and the tops of them to be a hard edge. Now I need to go a little bit greener. Cobalt green, Virgin green. So the bottom of these clouds need to be fairly soft. My paper was a little bit too dry, so when I said damp, it could have been damper. So I'm going to get some wet tissue now. So damp tissue, and just soften out the bottom of these clouds. And then just continue painting down to my rooftops. Some of these clouds are just try and make the top edge of them a little bit more interesting. Of course, the paper's quite dry there, so I'm getting a hard edge. So a mixture of hard and soft edges, okay? And don't be too fussy with it. Don't overdo it. Try and do it all in one if you can. Now, let's come down. I'll continue with this blue and over the building there, over there, probably over that one there as well. And now this road needs to be fairly light, certainly in the distance, and then gets a little bit darker closer to us. If you've gone too dark in the distance, just lift off with a brush or a damp tissue, that area there. As I come down to the foreground, I'm going to now go to something warmer, which is going to be the base color of the exposed earth in the foreground and this lane as well. I'm using a light red for this. So the distant field, paint around my white house, and then so this very weak red won't matter when we come on to putting the grass on top. It's going to give it a bit of a warmer feel, a little bit of a warmer feel to it. That can be cool. We'll paint around our falling down gate post. And then back to the red, maybe a little bit of yellow ochre for this pathway. Just, and this kind of brush technique I'm using, I'm dabbing the paper and I'm getting little sort of subtle variations of lights and darks. It will, of course, dry lighter, so it won't be so evident, but hopefully just a little bit there. Cadmium orange, yellow ochre. Getting the top of my cistern. Up to the roadside. And just continue down to the bottom. You're getting a little bit of a shine here, I can see on the screen. That will of course go away when it's dry. You can see a bit more clearly what I've done. Let's go a little bit lighter in places as well. Use my fingertips to move the paint along and lift it off a little bit. And that is pretty much it. For step number one. Hopefully those clouds worked out. Yes, they might work in a way because they're sort of angling down, they're curved down. So maybe drawing the eye into that area there as well. Now, to speed the drying up, I'm just going to get out my hairdryer, everyone. Now, my microphone should mute itself straight away with this louder noise. So fingers crossed. Here we go. Okay, I think that's fairly dry now. The paper's still quite warm, so I'll just let it cool down a little bit. And that's quite a hard line there by the dairy building there. Then I'll soften that up with the grass next. So back to the plan. We've done number 1, and number 2 will be the rooftops and the grass. Okay, maybe a little bit of that field beyond, just a little bit, but mostly the buildings and the grass. Okay. I'll just see if there's any questions. No, I don't think there's any questions. Okay. Who's painting along with me, by the way, on this live demo? Because maybe you'd like to share your painting at the end on the live demo just before we sign off, as we normally do. Fazia is. Okay, great. Dandy, yes, okay. Right, so rooftops. The rooftops are, value-wise, a little bit darker than the sky and a good bit darker than the sky. Now, this one here is a mixture of warms and cools. So I'm going to, excuse me, I'm going to mix up a little bit of, what is that roof color? A bit of burnt sienna and a little bit of cerulean blue, or cobalt if you haven't got it. Now that's too much blue. Let's go warmer again. Something like that. Again, remember it's going to dry lighter. Now that's too brown, so go cooler again. Down to and around the base of the chimney. My mop brush, hopefully your brushes as well. It holds a lot of paint. It's got a good point to it and a good edge as well. Quite a versatile brush. Now again, if you want to make that rooftop, if it's all gone a bit flat, and it's actually, to me, it looks a little bit darker at the top, tiny bit lighter at the bottom. So damp tissue out again, and you can just add in a little bit of imperfection to it. Right, now, rusty rooftop of the middle building, and then we've got the lighter dairy building on the left-hand side. So rusty color, alizarin crimson, a little bit of ultramarine blue, a little bit of cadmium red. It's getting close. A bit more of a ultramarine blue. It's darker than that one, but don't go too dark, otherwise we won't get the impact of the shadows when we come to those. Now this is a little bit more of a intricate roof to get in. We've got the slope of the top of the roof, and then try and get a good point on the brush. The right hand side. Or the left hand side of the roof. There we go. Quickly go over the rest of it down to the end. Try and make the two ends parallel with each other. And sometimes it's easier to, when you're painting at different angles like this, it's sometimes easier to move the paper, but mine's fixed as you can see. So I'm having to twist and turn to get the right angle. There we go. And I'll leave that rooftop to the end. That too looks like it's got a bit of rust on it. Well, it's more rusty sort of on the end there. There is this rusty roof here. Get that one in. I'll do the timbers. I'll do the timbers towards the end. Grass next, then. Spring green, a bright green, and a little bit, actually that field. I'll start on the left-hand side with this field, but it looks like it's been cut, and it's got this sort of light brown where the stalks have dried. There we go. Now we need to go more vibrant with the green for the grass. And this grass is, yes, we've got that bright green, but there's some cool greens in there as well. Little sort of soft patches of cool green. But first of all, let me get in patches of the light green first of all. So I'm imagining little areas of the earth showing through. I'll need to make those shapes have softer edges to them, coming up to the edge of my path, up to the buildings. Of course, this being an old path, we've got the grass growing over the edge. Again, I'm dabbing, I'm sort of stabbing the paper with these blotches of green. And then other side of the path. up to the end of the path and the grass this side. See, my edge of the path is just going around like that there. Let's go up on this slope. The grass is a bit cooler, so I'm going to add in a bit of viridian green now. And that will be good for the bushes. Actually, some of those bushes are a little bit warmer. Rub it on the right-hand side of the porch, and then up to the roadside, right-hand edge, right-hand edge of the barn. Keep this cool theme going. Up to the roadside. And as you can see from the source photo, the grass has a very uneven edge to it. You know, the road is coming down to the pathway. We've got a soft edge here and there. And let's drop in a little bit of this cooler green here and there. Little blotches here and there, soft. We're painting wet in wet here, so we're getting our soft edges. Just beyond the cistern, the vegetation changes a little bit to some warmer, dry grass. So go warmer in there. And got the grass on the other side of the road. This is where I'm using the flat edge of my brush. Just that little triangle of grass there up to the roadside. Try and get in a straight edge for that. Little bits of grass. In the middle of the pathway. Might add a little bit of a shadow, bearing in mind the light coming from the left-hand side. A little bit of a shadow later on around the edge of the grass. Just check my edges now. Again with a mop brush, just dropping in a little bit of it. It's still quite damp. You can look at the painting against the light and you can see where it's shiny. It's still quite damp, and you can Play around with it. Where it's drier, like there, getting a harder edge, which you may or may not want. Think about also when you're doing wet in wet. I just put in something there that had too much water in it. And I'm going to get probably there a little bloom or a little cauliflower, which might be all right actually. It's all right when it comes to vegetation. It sort of looks okay. Right, we'll just let that do its thing. Just with some of these gaps here. May not want them to stand out too much. Okay, back to the plan. Are there any questions, anyone? Oh, I think there's a question. Oh, Ben just confirming. I think Ben's just confirming he's painting along. All right, thanks, Ben. All right, back to the plan then. We've done number 2. We're on number 3 now, the darker woods, and then we're into the shadows. I'll probably do 3 and 4 together here. Okay, we're going into the darks, darker now. Classic watercolor painting, light to dark, really. Background trees then. A cool green and quite dark at the base. Try not to go too hard with the edge where it meets the field. So I might need to just soften that out a little bit. It's a harder edge over here. Actually, my grass over here is still damp. I'm just going to get my hairdryer out just to dry that edge up there. So excuse me, everyone, hairdryer time. That should be right. Start on the left with the cool greens. Start off with a Viridian green, then a little bit of burnt sienna, a little bit of ultramarine blue, bit of burnt sienna. Could use a little bit of red just to get that sort of distant tree foliage. These trees look like a mixture of deciduous trees and conifers or pine trees. So you've got to think about the sort of tops these trees that you want and try and make that edge look as natural as you can. Getting the value right. Go a bit cooler if you want to. And then up to our buildings, the all-important edge. Top of the dairy building. That white building. On the left. And now as we come down, start putting in some different colors, a bit of cobalt blue to go cooler, and then darker right at the base. get this edge defined here. A little bit of neutral tint to go a little bit darker. Not too much neutral tint. You don't want to go black, but to get that instant darkness. There we are. Not have too many of these little light areas, the paper showing through. It will work towards the top of those trees where the light's showing through, but not down towards the bottom where the foliage is a little bit denser. Now let's continue our tree theme between the two buildings. And up against my main building roof. Check my point. And paint carefully up to the roof of the middle building. There we are. Now on the right-hand side, there's some trees just on the... These trees look as if they're actually growing on the left-hand side of the road, but they're a nice bit of darkness against the light of the building. And then there's almost a gap at the end of the road. And then the trees going up again. Too bright. Go cooler. Cooler, darker. Just observe these trees and you'll see little gaps here and there. And they're going up higher on the right-hand side. Again, denser as we go down to the bottom of these trees. And darker. Neutral tint, ultramarine blue. Down to the base of the trees, and there's some nice shadows. I don't want to make too much of this, but there's some nice shadows going across the grass, which just does create the impression of the slope, a little bit of a slope on that right-hand side, like here, for example. the edge. Now, our goldenrod wildflower hedge, and then the shadows on those buildings. Bright green then, first of all. Well, there's a little bit of coolness in it, but it is darker. It is darker than the field beyond. And it does, there's a little bit of a taller bush that's connecting with the background trees. Was good to have these connections going on. And then that's the side of the hedge, if you can imagine that. And now we're coming down to ground level. And this is where we want to get in the shadows. So something dark. It's actually quite dark. That there is dark. That's dark. Followed by that right-hand side of the middle building. That's quite dark as well. Right. Dark shadow for the goldenrod. Neutral tint. Ultramarine blue. Burnt sienna, a little bit of ridging green because we are going across grass. Now I'm holding my brush like this because I'm negatively painting around some blades of the grass that is catching the light. So hopefully I'm getting an impression of the grass, little longer blades of the grass catching the light and showing up against the darker shadow from the goldenrod. Well, I need to go darker than that, probably. Neutral tint. Ultramarine blue. Ridging green. And then try and get the effect of these little blades of grass showing up. There's a little bit of a next to this dairy building. I need to get a little bit of darker grass there. Maybe something creating a shadow there. Haven't done it yet. We've got the shadow from the stump there. Little bits of shadow, darker grass here and there. Now, shadow on the buildings and more of the shadow going across the grass. Clean my brush. We're changing slightly to a cooler. Where can I mix this? Get rid of that green there. A cooler shadow. Well, cooler there, quite dark, but very dark there. Maybe a bit of a cerulean blue. might be a bit too blue, not not overdo it. You've got to think about this shadow. Maybe there could be a little bit of green in there, a little bit of warmth in there, possibly. But the main thing is getting the value right. Excuse me. So we've got our horizontal edge. In the photo, there's a nice triangle of light there, but I'm taking the liberty, as I explained, to imagine the light has moved around top of our free stump or gate post, and then the shadow on just inside the roof, the edge of the roof. All important shadow, defining that edge, and then slightly narrower shadow coming down there. There's a little one going up there. Across there. I'll come back to the details of the timbers and the roof in a minute. Now, dark here. What's the color of that shadow? I mean, it's almost like a slaty blue. Let's add in blue here, a neutral tint, but not charcoal gray. Okay, try and mix an interesting. Now that may not be dark enough. Down to my bushes, and then the shadow going across. Going across the main building. Now, some shadows going across the grass, back to something similar to this, but I'm imagining they're not as dark as that. And not too much of a shadow there, but more of a shadow here with this bigger building. And a little bit of a shadow underneath these shrubs. By the side of the cistern and above the cistern, and just on the right-hand side, perhaps a little bit more on the right-hand side of the main building. That's a tiny, tiny, tiny bit of a shadow. Need a good point with this tiny bit of a shadow. Just defining that edge a bit more. Post. It's an old wooden post. What color can we have for that? Let's have a bit of lavender, bit of burnt sienna. Light on the left-hand side. There we go. Light on the left-hand side. What else can we do now? We're almost now getting into the detail stage, and adding a bit more paint to some of the to get the textures of things coming out. Right. Let me just check if there's any questions. I don't think there is. Right. I'm now eventually switching brush to a medium-sized synthetic brush. This is a number 6 from Cotman. It must be about 30 years old, this brush. May not be available anymore, but there's so many makes like this. A small, medium synthetic brush. And let's get in now the windows and these timbers, the all-important timbers. And I'll define that shadow under there, shadow at the top. Start with this building here first of all, the dairy building or the smaller light building, and there's just a few little. Now I want to try and do some little dry brush marks here. So there's not much paint. If I think there's too much paint on the brush, then against the sponge, mop it up. So I'm ending up with very little on the brush. It's easier to add more to it than taking it off. Try and get it parallel. That's too much, you see. I want to get drier. And warmer. We've gone rusty at the top, picked up a bit of cadmium orange. Right. Not much water. Timbers, vertical timbers on this building. That sort of grayish weathered timber look. So we've got a base blue color there first of all. Let's paint in some of the darker timbers. Again, dry brush. And actually, I think I could go a bit of neutral tint. Then main building, similar technique. Now that's not enough paint there. There's this sweet zone of just the right amount of paint on the brush, and the shape I've got my brush head as well. There are lots of these vertical lines. Take your time with this, says he, rushing it. There we are. Maybe not go too dark. You don't want to make it sort of the similar value to what's going on around it. Although that's going to appear lighter when I get that shadow in. We'll do the little hat now. And a little bit of colour for the actual triangle. Just while it's drying, I get in the windows. Neutral tint. And then the doorway, which is hidden by the in the photo, it's hidden by the gate post that's going that way. So I'll just imagine I think it's got a window in it. This I think Jean said this is the dairy building. And there are some lines of the boards. I might use the rigger brush just to get some of those in. Right. Where are we now? Let's go and add in a darker shadow there, slightly darker. Might be a bit too dark, but it should be right. Darker shadow here. Now, this will be, need to think about the light. Perhaps there's a bit of a tiny bit of light there. Hopefully that's making those dark timbers a lot lighter now. Yes, possibly. And likewise, the shadow underneath our chimney top and the shadow just goes a little bit around the right hand side there. Window here. And then shadow in the doorway. Up to the rooftop as well. Let's try and make some of these timbers a bit darker. There's a line there. And then just a few of these timbers are just a tiny bit darker than the others. I don't know why, but they're giving that sort of character to those timbers. Side window there. There's some darker. In fact, some of those verticals there, they've gone browner. Let's pick up some of my cadmium orange here. Just a little bit. Don't overdo it. mostly there. It's a tiny bit here as well. Let's add a bit of definition to the road. The road has got those tire marks going down, sort of that darker, a soft dark band down the middle. No, bit of lavender. Got to be careful here. Well, I've got this small brush and this darker paint, just a bit more definition to some of the pathway there. Maybe little bits of stones and chippings. I think I'm nearly there. I need to get in the yellow flowers of the goldenrod, and to do that, I'm going to use my flat brush here. Make sure this one's clean. Flat brush here with thick, opaque cadmium yellow or bright yellow. It's actually, if you look at the flowers close up, they're more like a greeny yellow, not a really bright yellow. But because I'm going over green, I need to go a little bit more yellow to compensate. So let's just see. Again, it's almost dry brush, not too much water, and just this little bit of like a sort of almost like an umbrella type shape there, and a little bit down near the barn. I could add a bit of darkness down, on this main building. Sorry, the middle building, because there's a little bit of shadow going over that bush. And we're nearly there. possibly some horizontal boards for this building. Now you've got to be very careful here. This is almost getting to the stage where it's too much detail. Add a little bit of definition to those boards. I think I am about done. This cistern here needs a bit of shadow on that side and the base, and a little bit of shadow there where the goldenrod is just growing up on that side. Little finishing touches with a smaller brush. My gate post. And find the top of that ridge a bit more. That field has got some little rows in it, just a few. Make it a little bit more field-like, and soften up the edge as well. Yeah, as always, it's knowing when to stop is the main decision. I think I've captured the character of it. So I hope you liked the demo. Looking forward to seeing your efforts as well on Patreon, of course. Thanks very much for watching.